Okay, so after our coverage of U.S. political news this week, it's time to talk about some less important political news, which kind of sucks, but everyone is talking about Dr. Anthony Fauci. Yes, that Dr. Fauci, the one who is, I guess, around the news media so often. People are very upset about that. And it seems as if there is a conservative backlash to Dr. Fauci that one wouldn't expect until you realize what conservatism is and how anti-science conservatism is. But really, at this point, Dr. Fauci seems to be in some hot water, according to many right-wing media sources. We'll look at Tucker Carlson later on in the show. But the big one here actually comes from this article that I picked up from Fox News called "Fauci Emails Spark Flood of Backlash. Needs to Stop Playing Games," in quotes. That one is by Tyler Olson. So, basically, the important thing to note here is that Dr. Fauci has been politicized from the very beginning, and I'm going to get into this sort of Rand Paul, Dr. Fauci debate that is occurring, especially in Congress. But before we do that, let's think about what the right claims is in the emails, what is actually in the emails, and where the emails were gotten from. And frankly, I'll actually start with the last one. The emails were gotten in a FOIA request. They were not hacked. They were gotten in a FOIA request, FOIA being the Freedom of Information Act that allows journalists to request different federal agencies and some of their papers. So FOIA was done by, I believe, BuzzFeed and the Washington Post, and Fauci and the NIH released a few emails from the early pandemic. And basically, the right is claiming a lot of things are in these emails. The big email that they're pointing to as a smoking gun is a correspondence between Peter Daszak and Dr. Fauci. Now, to be very clear, Peter Daszak began the correspondence by thanking Dr. Fauci for sort of downplaying the lab leak theory. Now, the lab leak theory is this idea that it's a variety of different theories coalesced into one, but the primary goal of that theory is to prove that the COVID-19 virus leaked from a lab. That lab is probably the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and there's a lot of different claims that are auxiliary to the main claim that it leaked from the lab. Some of them are it was intentionally leaked. Some of them are it was leaked to cause a plandemic. Variety of different crazy people saying a variety of different crazy things. Now, that doesn't mean the lab leak theory is wrong, but it does sort of pretend not very well for the lab leak theory. But that being said, let's not judge a theory by its auxiliaries. And instead, let's see what Daszak actually said. So Daszak was, or is, I guess, the someone associated with EcoHealth. Now, EcoHealth received millions in grants from the NIH. The NIH generally gives out grants to nonprofits like EcoHealth. And some of those grants made their way to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Specifically, according to Fox News, a $600,000 grant came from Fauci's agency. Specifically, Fauci is, of course, the director of the NIAID, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He's not the director of the NIH, as I sometimes hear said, and he's definitely not the director of the CDC, as I've also heard said, but he is the director of the NIAID, and some of the money from there found its way to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, this is a very interesting statement and a very weird correspondence to be upset at, because, number one, Dr. Fauci never actually explicitly came out and said, the lab leak theory is completely and utterly wrong. He never specifically said that. He may have sometimes downplayed it in the sense that he said that it was unlikely, but he never said that it wasn't true because there was no way to know that at the time. So not only that, you have a lot of different people like stretching the definition of this, and we'll go to Rand Paul in a second, but stretching what this email actually said. And it was just really a thank you for doing that. And it was not necessarily something that Dr. Fauci asked for, but it was sent. So this email was in the record, and that email was released. Some of it was redacted, I believe. So we'll look at what happened there. Also, kind of funny, some people are claiming that it being redacted means that, I think Tucker Carlson claims this, means that there is some, criminal investigation into Fauci, that's probably not true. I'm actually going to say it's not true right now, but perhaps it comes out later that it is. So I'm going to hedge my bets and say it's extremely, extremely unlikely that that's true. There are other claims that are being made by the Fire Fauci crowd that, for instance, that Fauci knew that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was conducting gain-of-function research. So gain-of-function research is this subsect of virology where there are viruses that are extant in the world, extant meaning that they exist in the world, and that the Wuhan Institute of Virology or laboratories like it would make these viruses more contagious. They would make them more deadly in order to find ways to stop them. And the argument is that perhaps the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV-2, that one came out of this lab and probably infected others. So the gain-of-function research, the argument is that Fauci may have funded the gain-of-function research, perhaps inadvertently, perhaps advertently, and that's what people are trying to find out. Well, perhaps they're trying to find that out. More likely, they're trying to smear Anthony Fauci because their part of the culture war thinks that Anthony Fauci is evil, and the other side of the culture war thinks that he's a hero. So there's a variety of different things going on there. But the important thing to remember is that this gain-of-function research is supposedly being blamed for creating SARS-CoV-2, which there is an argument for that, an argument against it, but we don't know that for sure. And there is an increasing polarization around this topic. However, I should also note that this isn't some Republican fantasy. There is some major support for the lab leak theory, and also on the other side, gain-of-function research. There is support for both on both sides of the aisle. President Biden, for instance, has asked for an inquiry into the lab leak theory and to see whether it's true or not. And, for instance, the Trump administration actually was the one who lifted the ban on gain-of-function research imposed by Obama. So, actually, there is a bit of partisan bickering going on, but it's not necessarily, or it really shouldn't be a partisan issue. That being said, the Fauci emails are beginning to gain traction, and we're not going to see the end of these Fauci emails. So I want to briefly talk about something else occurring with Dr. Fauci, and it is the Rand Paul Fauci debates that are sort of occurring. It's very weird what's happening with that, because I generally do support the right of Congress to have oversight. And in fact, I support it in this case. The Republicans, especially the Republicans at this point, because they're the opposition, they do have the right, and they do have, frankly, the duty to provide oversight to Dr. Fauci. For some reason, the Democrats actually are providing less oversight, perhaps due to the fact that Fauci is beloved by the media. Perhaps they don't want to upset the media because Dr. Fauci was seen as a sort of antidote to Trump, and the antidote to Trump was picked up by the liberal media. I'm calling them the liberal media. I should probably say the mainstream media. But it was picked up by the more liberal parts of the mainstream media and pushed during the Trump administration. So perhaps that makes Democrats more anxious about actually holding Fauci accountable. And it is important to hold every elected official accountable. That being said, it seems like Rand Paul's Fauci debates actually don't do that at all. In fact, it seems like they're mostly culture war fights that really hold no actual substance. So Rand Paul will question Fauci and nothing will come of it because Rand Paul is asking really crazy questions. Like, I think Rand Paul tried to grill Fauci on masks, which at this point, it's kind of silly. Oh, another part of the Fauci emails was that Fauci said in February of 2020 that masks might not work, and or that he didn't say that masks might not work. He said that it was not CDC that it wasn't the CDC's recommendation to push masks, and perhaps there was a reason for that. That was important. I think later on Fauci said that the reason why that was pushed is because they wanted to have more masks for people inside like inside the healthcare industry. That being said, it did lead to some people questioning the mask mandate that was eventually put on by several counties, several local agencies, and that may have led to further deterioration of the COVID of the state of COVID in the country. That being said, I don't really think that, frankly, I don't think that Republicans would trust the NIH either way. That's just not going to happen. And then the other thing about that is that grilling Fauci on masks now sort of seems silly because, of course, things change, and public health is not necessarily direct, pure science. It is an applied science, and you do have to balance the good and the bad. There are trade-offs with every science, like economics, like social science, and especially with public health. So with this public health issue that was occurring with masks, there are questions on how Fauci could have done it, but it seems silly to now claim, well, actually, you said that masks don't work in February. How do we know that they work now? Because the science is now supportive of that statement, and the science was not supportive of that statement before. Of course, you can question science. I think you should be able to question anything, but it seems a bit silly to not know what happened, even though it was extremely obvious what was occurring. So this Rand Paul Fauci debate, and I'm not going to play any here. I was going to play it at some point, but I decided against that because I wanted to do another special. So this Rand Paul Fauci debate, we'll see it continue to play out, and I hope that at this point we can get something better than this constant Rand Paul Fauci discussion in the media. I hate it. I hope you do too. But later in the show, we'll discuss medical Jim Crow, and you won't want to miss it. So subscribe to In Progress on YouTube and tell me who you think is to blame for the politicization of COVID. The liberal media, Dr. Fauci, Donald Trump, Fox News. You can find me on Twitter at RealRPerez. I'd love to hear you. After this, we're going to go into global news, where we will discuss Israel and the new Israeli government. You won't want to miss that.